and welcome everybody. It's now time for the Mugi's Prime Time, the meta talk about the Prime Championship circuit, the final phase that have been played the last weekend. And tonight I have two wonderful guests that will join me to discuss all about it. I have TJDJ from EU and I have Efsixx from the NS side, the other side of the Atlantic. How are you guys doing?
Doing good, pretty man. High. Yeah, it's gonna be good. We're gonna have a lot of fun.
NA versus EU, pretty much. It's gonna be great.
So, if I'm not mistaken, you both have done a wonderful job casting the tournament the past weekend.
Thank you.
It was a good time to follow the entertaining aspect. On my side, I'm just a PT analyst desk guy, so I will take only this part of the shining light. So for those that don't know the principle of the meta talk, the idea is that we go over the event of the recent tournament that has been taken down. And so we will just discuss about everything that will come to our mind, the result, the format, all of that, but also the memorable moment. And then in the second part of the show, we will be able to go through a little bit of data that I've prepared for everyone here tonight. And it will be nice with ban rate, peak rate, win rate, but also some player data stat, what hero has been picked over the different roles, all the items, and at the end a little bit of trivia data because I like to offer some prize to the player that means absolutely nothing but just makes me happy in the end. So to start with the tournament, so the tournament was, we had 8 teams participating. So if I'm not mistaken, the principle is that they do for groups phase previously, and you have to qualify to get there. So the principle is that you normally have 6 slots that come from the group stage, and you have 2 slots that come from the previous first 2 position of the previous edition of the Prime Championship circuit. Unfortunately, for this edition, Royalty, that was initially the first seed that won the previous tournament, disbanded, and so they weren't able to play. So this time they got 7 slots open up from the group stage, and so we got 8 teams that were there. We had Rogue, Even Worse Timing, Red Dojo, Dirty Lake and the Boys, Orca Pods, Professors, No Communication, and Double Vision. Do you have anything to say, TJDJ, on the roster that we had for that tournament, basically?
Yeah, with the teams, honestly, I remember this on cast because I have had the pleasure of casting multiple PCC events as well, going back to, I believe it was the February event was my first. And honestly, just the level of competition that had been coming out from each of these events, just the level of macro play, the mechanics, the individual play, all of that just kept on going up and up and up and up. It felt like the winners of each tournament kind of set the benchmark that the following event was absolutely obliterated as well. It would be we'd watch the Immune versus Professors all the way back in February, and it was damn, this is some incredible Predecessor. This is the peak of it right now. And then Royalty absolutely obliterated Immune in the semifinals and raised the bar again. And then we had Even Worse Timing come out as well, with a bit of an EU NA mix-up, really dominate purely through macro as well. So just that level got even better. So yeah, it was a very enjoyable event, and it was great to see a lot of returning players and new players as well.
Yeah, that was very, very, very nice. In terms of how do you expected the tournament to go about Efsixx in that regard? Before we dive into the result, you saw the roster, what was your basically your winner pick in a sense, and how do we expected that the thing is going to unfold?
Honestly, I kind of knew from the beginning, Even Worse Timing was going to go out there and show their stuff. I had a suspicion and D-Lab might be able to contest them a little bit better in the finals. But if you look at Even Worse Timing's roster, I mean, they have some of the top players even since way back on their team, and just the way they're able to come together and just use that macro and micro play and just kind of set that bar, like TJDJ said, even higher than before on the PCC. Was just, they just had everything going for them.
Yeah, definitely. On my side, I was actually interested because we see basically 5 teams returning. That 5 teams that were already part of the scene. There was Rogue, Red Dojo, Seismic correctly pointed out in the chat that Sismic and North were subbing for Red Dojo, old player from the royalty roster that were like helping Red Dojo because apparently some of the players weren't available for this final phase. We got Dirty Lake and the boys, we got Professors, a very team that is here from the beginning, and no communication. But also I was interested to, like, of course there was even worse timing, like a powerhouse that everyone was expecting to actually produce like amazing result, and they actually delivered. But I was also like curious to see like the aspect of Orcapods and Double Vision, which is two teams that most of the players didn't knew anything about. And so I was curious to see also like how this new team that just arrived like at the top level of competition in the NA side were going to fare. Regarding on the full bracket, so basically like it was a single elimination with the quarterfinal being like all best of 3 and with a seeding prospect. So like Rogue, since they were second in the previous edition, they got like the first seed because royalty disbanded, and then the all 7 other team, they just placed based on their result on the group stage. And so we have the best of 3 for every quarterfinal, we have a best of 3 for the semi-final, and we have the best of 5 from the grand final. And as we can see, like it even worse timing that bring it home, got all the way to the top. And the first thing like that comes to my mind here when I watch this graph is every single series is a clean sweep. Like what is your take on that, TJDJ?
Well, it's fun. It means we can kind of save our voices for like some of the bigger moments as casters. But yeah, this was a genuine surprise. I felt that I don't think that the way the sets went necessarily reflected how close the teams were in case of skill level. There were a number of games throughout this tournament where you would see a kill lead for one team, but the other team had also kind of been power farming and keeping up in levels. So they were very much neck and neck. I think if we were looking at like kind of average game times, you're looking at maybe 27 minutes plus for a lot of these games as well. So they were going quite deep into, you know, all prime fights, and it was oftentimes just big team fights that kind of decided it rather than just one team running away from it. Not saying that didn't happen, but it was definitely it kind of all came down to the final climactic moment in a lot of these games.
Efsixx, any comment on that?
I mean, TJDJ kind of hit it on the head there. Just from my perspective, there was one team that would focus more objectives than the other. And I think that sometimes the other team just didn't notice quick enough, and that kind of just pushed their lead to win these games. And usually when they go into the second game, that's where the mental aspect kind of kicked in. They're like, oh man, we're down one, we can't lose another one. And I think that was a big factor as well, just knowing like, oh man, this is the last game, and that kind of puts people in like a weird position mentally and kind of affects their gameplay as well.
Yeah, regarding like the matchup that we had here, so on the first on the quarterfinal aspect, I think we kind of got the result that we were all expecting in a sense, like Rogue against Double Vision. Rogue was the more veteran team, but in a sense, like Rogue also, it was their new roster, and I think that was the first time they were competing in the tournament all together. So they were there to also like try to prove something. So it was definitely the favorite for the first match, but who knows who could have happened with like the roster change, because Wengol now was playing with them, and there was also another change, if I remember correctly. And also like I think they've done the swap of like Pinzo Dunzo going to the offlane, and like I think it was Tekken Kid that was usually like their offlaner that then switched for the Super Troll. Like, do you have any like information on why this change has been made, or like or what did you think of the change?
Honestly, like when I first saw like the roster breakdowns with the roles as well, I was genuinely surprised actually, because you know Pinzo, fantastic support role. You know, there was a reason that Rogue were able to get to the finals as well, and Pinzo had some really good standout performances. Tekken Kid as well, Lance, and I'm sure Efsixx as well will agree with me as well with Tekken Kid, is like this guy is a mechanical monster as well in the solo lane as well. So it's like to see that role change happen, we kind of did raise a few eyebrows. Like, really? Like, why would you break what worked so well so soon before the tournament? So I think there was definitely a lot of raised eyebrows about that one. Obviously, benefit of hindsight as well. You'd probably say maybe, Tekken Kid and Pinzo, if they'd gone back to their natural roles, you probably might think that they would have done maybe a little bit better. But honestly, like in terms of individual performances, you still have two really good players and they did play pretty well, but it's just, how the 5v5 went.
Maybe any insider info on that thing, Efsixx, from the other side of the Atlantic? Because like I'm on the same boat of TJ. Like I was surprised because I felt like Tekken Kid had like some stellar performance on the offlane, and Pinzo was really pulling his weight very, very well on the support role. So I was super surprised as well.
So I guess the word that's been going around was essentially Pinzo tried it out in scrims and he was liking it, and then Tekken was just like, I want to play support. So there's like, we're just gonna do it anyways. But in my mind, I'm like, I don't think you should be doing it on the big stage. Maybe in the round robin phase when you guys are like, okay, I think we can actually get away with this while still going in towards the final rounds. Because Tekken Kid just brings so much to the off lane. I think they would have beat D-Lab there. I don't think Nitro is on the same level as Tekken Kid. And I think Rogue would have won their series if Tekken Kid was in the offlane just because of his presence, like I was saying. And then I think we would have seen a better final matchup, giving a little bit more run for the money with Snoop versus Tekken over there. So Snoop can't really just do whatever he wants.
Well, thank you for insane info. So what I actually like, I'm happy about, like I kind of agree in terms of like the actual level of the team of Rogue. I would think they would have performed better if they kept like this change, but apparently it's something that both player wants. So now I'm really like looking forward to the future to see like once they get a little bit more practice in what they actually like really likes to do, like where they will get in the end, because yeah, it's you have like an adaptation period in a sense when you do this type of roster change, but apparently it wasn't forced, and so it's like more towards like the will of both players. So at least like I expect like great things for them like in the future event if they participate, definitely. Other like quarterfinal that I think like was interesting is the quarterfinal that has been like really shown. It was like Professors against Red Dojo. I have to admit also like on that one, it's true they had two subs in the form of Sismic and North, like both fantastic player, but as you're subbing into an event, it's always like a little bit harder to have like the full team chemistry. But I was still like a little bit surprised about the fact that Professor kind of dominated both series, and I was like really expecting like a very, very neck to neck fight, and in the end it was like kind of, it was still like a great fight between the two teams, but I still feel like Professor like really got ahead and dominated the series overall. And here there's a little mistake on the graph. I said that Red Dojo is the red team winning, and it's actually not. It's Professor, the team with the two in front of them.
It's fine, don't worry, Mugi, we can forgive you.
Thank you.
One mistake per stream. One mistake per stream.
Exactly.
But just a little thing and go off of that. I mean, you're correctly right. I think it was just the fact that the chemistry wasn't there for them being able to like really play with each other. Because I know Atomic is pretty good friends with him. He's usually the leader to really tell them with all their decisions makings, and he was playing mid. So Seismic just coming in just to kind of fill in, I don't think that gives him much time to really get used to the team. So I think that was definitely a big factor. And then also Crazy Fool returning, because we did see Red Dojo kind of really put a whooping on them in the round robin. I'm not gonna lie to you.
True.
Yeah, there was definitely. Oh, sorry, Mugi.
Go
I
ahead.
think there was definitely some question marks about the Professors, especially after that group stage as well. It's like the Professors are, without doubt, the most consistent roster in the entirety of this competitive scene. Like it is the same five core players, and then I think it's Regal is their sub, I believe, for the group stage as well. And it's like, all the five players, good solid players, but when they come together, like fantastic team fighting, fantastic macro play, and also just the chemistry. These guys know exactly what the other is going to do without anyone kind of saying anything. I'm pretty sure that they could do an entire tournament muted and they'd still do very well purely based on synergy and their own gut feelings as well. But yeah, in the group stages, they came out of that on the 6th seed. as well, which also we're like, hang on, is it just taking one player out, just adding Regal in, and all of a sudden this Professor's team just loses so much? And I think maybe that speaks volumes of what Crazy Fool actually brings to the Professor's roster overall.
Yeah. I think there was also something that I remember like from inside Earth's info that sometimes like Mr. Gu is not the most talkative player, and so that's why like he fits so well in offlane. But if I remember in the group stage, it actually like fit in as the support because Regal was playing in the offlane, and it's true like support. It's like a role that you need to communicate all the time. You need to call the stuff. You need to be like with your team in comms, creating space, probably like what Crazy Fool is doing. And so maybe like Mr. Gu wasn't like as comfortable as Crazy Fool can be on the role. And Efsixx also, I mentioned that on the side of Rogue, the fact that you have like the main talkative person not being there can actually like affect a lot your performance in a tournament format. I also like that you mentioned like the group stage because this both team actually like face each other in the group stage, and Red Dojo like at 7 minutes in, like Kira on the, I think it's Natty, the carry of the Red Dojo, were like 5-0 at 7 minutes in. Here, the first match like between Professor and Red Dojo in the final phase, it was Professor that was at 7 minutes 5-0 over Red Dojo. So they kind of like answer like and speak volume to say like we're not here to actually lose again. So I guess they were also like kind of prepared. I also that's something I think I love about the Professor roster is when I was like following them like since like the beginning, and they was like doing a month ago. Like I love to watch their scrims because I think they're a good team, but there was a little bit this small like overconfidence that we don't need to do like things perfectly. It will work if we just go with the flow. And I feel like after like the previous PCC and like probably like the group stage, like it's a team that really like started to put on much more work because they weren't like playing that much the game anymore. And I really like started to see like a different type of Professors where like the combo between them were like on point. They weren't missing stuff. I remember like one game they were playing against like the Muriel lane, and they just like walk over with the Narbash and Rictor, and they were just waiting for the Thunk into the Replash, into the double silence, and that was a kill every single time. And Red Dojo was just like, yeah, but we can't do anything against that. They just walk on and we just die. So like very great level chemistry and team play on that.
Yeah, like you just said, I mean, IDOC just played a wonderful game. He was able to just invade the Red Dojo's jungle. He was able to put his presence around the map early game, and that kind of just set the tone for Professors, and they kind of just ran with it the entire time.
That was indeed very amazing. Unfortunately, like if we talk about ADOC Rictor, then we can maybe like move on into the even worse timing Professor match that unfortunately like ADOC didn't manage to get like the same level of success in that match, and even worse timing kind of like stop most of the aggression of Professors. And here I think I really like the idea of the series because Professor, from what I've seen during the whole tournament, it's really a team that love to go for this team fight comp. They go for objective together, they go for this 5v5, and Ever's World Streaming is like, no dude, we're not gonna do any 5v5. We have the Snoop on the offlane that will just split push the whole game, and we will not take your 5v5. So like two different type of philosophy here.
Yeah, it was really enjoyable to watch, honestly. You know, I had the pleasure of casting this series with Crashy as well, and we were kind of just in awe of that as well. We saw kind of the glimmers of what the Snoop can do, particularly on the Shinbi in the offlane pick. The winner of the inaugural Crashy MVP, by the way, was the Snoop because of the Shinbi pick and the performance as well. So this was kind of crazy, and you know, when I look into a draft, like if you had told me a couple of weeks ago before the event happened that a draft featuring a Shinbi and a FaZe is just going to absolutely wreck house on a team, I'd be like, what are you on about? Like, are you know, could you maybe pass some of that over? That seems like some pretty good stuff to have. But here we were in this set, and you saw how Vecron was able to pilot that phase. And you know, I'm sure when we get to the finals, we'll talk a lot more about Vecron's support performance as well. But yeah, this is when it really highlighted even worse timings, like strengths as well. And they did they just kind of pulled the professors apart. Really, they had no answer, and Guru as well in the solo lane. I don't mean to pile on or anything like that, but the Snoop absolutely schooled him in that lane constantly over both games. Guru got the Sevarog pick. It's like, okay, we've got late game insurance. You got Seta, we got Peel. Snoop's just as Mugi says, just split pushing constantly, just taking down inhibitors left, right, and center. And the professors didn't have an answer.
Yeah, I mean, that could also be a lot of people don't really realize when these small changes or I guess big changes are made that like certain heroes go into a different bracket now. Like Shinbi was just like one of those like, okay, it's all right. But I mean, the change towards Void Helm and Crystalline Curse kind of took Shinbi into a different aspect because usually you could just build Void Helm and kind of negate Shinbi's entire kit. But since they changed the entire passives on it and kind of switched Crystalline Curse as well, like she's now into a whole entire meta herself, and she's probably, in my opinion, one of the top offlaners just because she could stay back if there's somebody early game that has a little bit more pressure, just use her Q the entire time. And then once she gets onto line with that first Megacosm, just kind of do her thing. So I think a lot of people misread that going into this tournament on the final round, and I don't think they'll ever do that again.
Yeah, and I was also like super surprised about I tried the Snoop build in a solo queue recently, and with the TTK change, like just going like his build with Tainted Scepter, there was like the Flux Matrix in it, the Ward Breaker, and the Tainted Bastion. Absolute like no physical armor. You still tank like crazy because of all the passive and just the amount of health that you have, and you still like won every single 1v1 because you stack Obelisk as the crest. So like a very, very smart way of playing. I feel like for now, most of the team are not able to pull out this type of performance. Also, like we've seen even worse timing. Like they took great advantage of the split push strategy, so they could literally like use that, a lot of pressure that was creating somewhere on the map. And also we've seen like even worse timing, like time and time again, winning like some 4v5. So also like we have like the rest of the roster that is able to win a 4v5. Of course, the Snoop will be happy to take an inhibitor if he has nobody in front of him. But that was like very impressive. I really feel like also like the draft aspect of even worse timing. I feel like they were a step ahead of everyone else. They kind of didn't want the same pick as everyone else, so they could like really like targeted some pick. For instance, I remember against like the Professor, they just decided to ban Gideon every single time. They know Soul Reaper is a monster on Gideon, so they're just like, we don't play against that and we just do our things, basically.
Right, and that ban right there just takes Soul Reaper out of most of these big team fights because he can't do what he's usually used to doing. And then obviously all the other mids don't do the same thing as Gideon with that overall just presence. So it's smart by even worse timing every time they did that.
And then we had the other side of the bracket with Dirty Lake and the boys against Rogue. So it's kind of like also like I would say like kind of a friendship story that there is like both like player that used to be into Rogue that moved to create like Dirty Lake and the Boy. From what I knew, like when I got like the In the Mind of the Pro with like a nature, all those guys are friends. They all like played most of the time like all together, but it was kind of like I guess like a bit of rivalry here and to see like which was like the better roster in the end. Of course, once again. Rogue was playing with 2 subs, and in this first showdown between the two teams, it's actually like Dirty Lake and the boys that got ahead here.
Yeah, I think I just remember from this map is that just kind of this entire set really between Day Lake and the Boys and Rogue is that the farming efficiency coming out from Day Lake and the Boys was intense. Like in this set, they were I think it was game 1 or game 2 where they started with like a 5 kill deficit. It took them a bit of a time to get really on the board. You're looking at like past the 10-15 minute mark, I think. And then all of a sudden they just kind of pulled it back. And even though like Rogue had this advantage, they had levels, they had the kills, the goal they just didn't have. Like Day Lake and the Boys just kept up in farm. I think they were ahead on CS across every single lane. So that 5 kill advantage that Rogue had been able to build up, it just didn't matter at all. And then as the game got longer, I think this was I think it was like 34 minutes or something. Like these were quite long games as well, and they came down to just some pretty nifty team fighting coming out from Day Lake and the Boys as well.
Yeah, they definitely out macroed Rogue when it came to the overall presence. A lot of newer players would probably think, "Oh man, they're up in kills, they're totally winning, right?" But as soon as you press that tab screen, you're like, "Oh, they're up in CS. They're doing more objectives. They actually are not behind at all. They're actually ahead in terms of actual macro." So that's just one of those things that like comes to bite you later the longer the games run.
And speaking of macro, then basically like Dirty Lake and the boys liking their macro, but even worse timing, being the macro god of the tournament. Like then they face off in the final, and like they couldn't resist to the pressure and the efficiency of even worse timing. Like I remember like and also that there is something that I think like maybe Dirty Lake and the boy had some trouble is like they kind of like this play style of like having the macro, getting like the better farm, like scaling little by little, but not taking too many like very high risk play, which is kind of their DNA. But the problem is like when you're facing even worse timing that go for Morigesh, that go for Kira, that go for Shinbi, like you're not winning the scaling battle. And I feel like they kind of fell at least the first game into that trap when like Dirty Lake and the boys play their DNA against a game that was outscaling them, and they basically like spend the whole game like waiting to scale when the other team was scaling better than them, and they just couldn't do anything when they reached the late game.
Yeah, and just a word on that as well, like with some of the picks. So the game one of the grand finals, with Dirty Lake and the boys, I agree completely with what you're saying, Mugi, is that um with with what they played as well, just in the draft as well. So like Dirty Lake and the boys picking up the likes of the Feng Mao, taking the crunch. They've got Decker in the supporting role as well. So you're thinking, right, in terms of playmaking, early to mid game skirmishing, you're expecting this crunch and this Feng Mao to really get the ball rolling. But Vecron just kind of mitigated all of that. Like, those Lake of the Boys play a lot around the duo lane because, well, it is kind of in their name that Lakenator is a big win condition for them. And they're so good in that AD carry role as well that when you do get to that scaling late game point, Lakenator is just the old reliable, really, in this game when it comes to AD carries. And you know what he can do. But even worse timing just completely mitigate it. They held them at arm's length and just got that macro game rolling, and even having like Ray on the rampage, which was such a crucial pick as well. Like that's what I think all these 4v5s came from, is that Ray was basically worth about 3 people. I remember lamenting about it on cast as well. How insane some of the rampage we were seeing coming out of Ray.
Yeah, Ray definitely did carry for the fact that the Shimby wasn't around or Snoop wasn't around that game. The fact that this man has been nerfed so many times through patches, but still the number one jungler, and people just refuse to ban him is beyond me. And I don't understand it.
Yeah, we'll see a very, very nice stat regarding Rampage like later on the win rate aspect. It's yeah, you should probably have banned Rampage every single game if you weren't first pick. But then like the next two game, I think like we started to see a little bit more glimpse of hope on the side of Dirty Lake and the boys. They really started to like go for some fights, and there was like some good showing sometimes, and they even managed to get like some good aspect, and sometimes they win like very decisive engagement. But I felt like then they tried to chew a little bit too much than they could actually get, and they just like get immediately punished back by going a little bit too far forward. And so like once again, I'm very hopeful for the future because they really got this moment where they could get ahead of even a team like even worse timing. But then like the stuff after the stuff was sometimes like not perfectly like calibrated, and that actually like ends up like making them like, oh, we got this window of opportunity. They try to take too much, they lose the full window of opportunity, and then even worse timing is in the driving seat again. And
Yeah,
yeah.
they was it they were double buffed up, right? I remember in one of this, I think it was the second game, and they just took a fight that they should have just backed out of, reset, kind of come back into the game and just use the double buffs to like kind of push the advantage. But unfortunately, I think it was like a team wipe where like at least 3 or 4 went down. I was just like, well, I guess that's just now useless. And hey, even worse time is back where they need to be, up ahead. You guys don't have any buffs, so.
Yeah, and there was also that crazy moment which kind of exemplified that, is that Appy Picker hits a absolutely disgusting fly trap outside the mid lane inhibitor. That was like one of the big moments from that finals where, as I said, like, even worse timing, just knocking on the door, taking that. Like, Snoop's taking the left inhib in the mid lane. I believe. As I'm just like jogging my memory at the moment, it was Nitro on the Richter hit like threaded the needle to grab Pablo with the Riplash, which was first of all incredible hook as well. So Pablo like bursts all of his mobility to get out of there, and then Appy just chucks the fly trap out. It grabs it grabs the 3 priority members in one go, and it just absolutely demolished them. But then it's like, you know, you got this really high moment. It's like, this is, you know, massive defense. You know, can they hold on? Like the hope starts to build, but as we found out in this game, it's the hope that gets you in the end, because no less than a minute later, all of them were dead, and that wasn't even a 5 versus 5. They lost just 1v1s and 2v2s at the same time. It just collapsed apart, and even worse timing, just won the game basically.
Yeah, that level of play when you're a little bit like just a tiny bit overextended, and the enemy team like come back, they have to pick you like when it's 35 minutes into the game. You're just gonna get punished, but at the same time, when you're so far behind, you're trying to get as much as you can, and finding like this perfect limit of how much you should take to come back, but at the same time like offering an opportunity back is actually like very, very hard. And so Dirty Lake and the boys got like a lot of good experience out of this tournament, I'm pretty sure, and I expect to see them like again in future events on that. So I think that covered like pretty much like the whole tournament. Like any additional mention, memorable moment that you would like to share before we move on to the data part?
I would just say look out for Dirty Lake and the boys in the next one. I definitely think they have what it takes. Don't get me wrong, they did not play bad by any means. I think it just came down to those minuscule mistakes and who was playing just a tiny bit better in these team fights. So I think Dirty Lake and the boys have what it takes to really come back and kind of just shock everybody and put a little bit more work in through this time they have to come to the next tournament and kind of show what they really are about.
Yeah, a good team to watch out for as well. I think kind of the moments for me, because as I with casting this event, I did cast the grand finals with Lance as well, and I think it was game number 3 was probably the point that I'm probably annoyed my neighbors the most, because it was obviously here in EU. I'm sure the accent does kind of give it away, but casting a NA East tournament, basically we were doing the grand finals at past midnight for me, and so you can imagine how fun that was, I'm pretty sure, for anyone living in the vicinity. But it was game number 3. It was the All Prime Steel, essentially, coming out, where essentially what happened is Toasty hits a double stasis bomb onto, I think it was Pablo and to Shin at the same time. And then immediately Riftwalker's Iron Strikes does the Deca Tech to guarantee the stun coming out from the ultimate, and just evaporated their members instantly, and they just won this fight. And I just started screaming my head off, because like, this is insane. What a moment. And I think probably one of the plays of the tournament as well. But unfortunately, it wasn't something for Derek and the boys to really rally behind, because even worse timing were very inevitable. But I think that was definitely one of the highlight moments for me in that tournament.
Yeah, I think I remember this moment, and when I was analyzing the game like this Monday, I was like, "Oh, that's the comeback! Like, what happened after? Like, how did they use that?" And then, unfortunately, like in typical Dirty Lake and the boys fashion in that series, they just throw away that advantage that they got, like opportunity. I don't remember exactly what it were. Maybe like they go for the primal and there was the respawn, but yeah, that was like we said, once again. They have this glimpse of brilliance against a team like even worse timing. That was like definitely like a step ahead. Like I think they were a step ahead in terms of draft. They were a step ahead like in terms of meta as well. Like they play like picks that nobody like thought were very, very super duper good, and they just like make them work like they were flawless. And so in a sense, like, okay, even worse timing, like crush every single opposition, but I'm really happy they participate, because now they show a little bit of what it could be. So all the team kind of said like, oh, actually we have a lot to work on, and so we can get definitely like 10 times better when we reach the next tournament. So I'm really curious to see like what's gonna happen like once again like for the next PCC, especially with like this huge cash prize that is coming up. I really expect like teams to put in the work to compete for that prize.
So, I definitely think we'll see an increase in plays for the next PCC.
Yeah.
I see that.
Yeah. And also, like, it's one of them things as well where, like, you put on a tournament and you just always get, like, an uptick in participants the immediate thing after. Because there were no doubt people watching at home thinking, you know what? If I was in that tournament, it's even worse timing. And the Snoop, yeah, I would have demoed him and he would have been 0-10 within 2 minutes if I was playing that game. Get me in PCC, get me in this one. I'll show him what's what. And it's like, that's what we get to see. And that's how you get new players in and realize, it is a lot of fun as well, honestly. The casting's a blast, but playing in a tournament is a completely different experience. And I'm sure both of you can attest to that as well, as you have competitive experiences under your belt as well. Not just with Predecessor as well, as I am seeing that check behind you, Mugi. Don't think that's gone unnoticed.
Yeah. I have to admit,
Mugi was a Smite legend, my friend.
Well, only before the game become gold, then I had to be a normal man that go to work. But yeah, it was a very good time, and you're right. Like this adrenaline and this emotion that you feel at the end of a tournament that you actually win is something I can put into words. Like a very, very amazing moment so far.
So yeah, enter PCC. That's what we're saying, and also enter for the core as well. EU people, I'm watching you. We need more EU teams as well.
Yeah.
So I just want to cast more players because again, like same with the PCC. Like we basically have like kind of the premier tournaments for both regions. So come on, EU.
Yeah.
Get your act together. Come on.
Definitely. So on those very, very nice words, I think it's time to go into the data part. And so we will have the first one, which is about the peak and ban rate of all character in this tournament. And there is already like a few interesting mention on the document, which is like the first one is Kira 100% presence in every single game. Like Kira was the carry that all team like kind of preferred. They were like always like fighting for it. Like why is that? Because like on that aspect of the meta, like to share with the chat, I wasn't there like for like 2 weeks because of like real life stuff, and so like I was completely out of the meta. So maybe you can enlighten me a little bit, like why the Kira like became like so proficient. She was already like starting to see like a bump in the previous PCC, but now she's just like the default carry, it seems like.
I mean, to be honest, you won't see it from playing pub matches because it takes a little bit more communication to play with Kira as a whole in the carry lane. So obviously these teams are in comms, they're able to communicate. Kira just brings so much to the table. Her abilities pretty much makes her like one of those strongest 1v1 carries in the game. Like most carries are not going to beat out Kira in a 1v1, right? She just has too much to her carry, especially with her dash, and she gets that power increase. Her ult is insane, and I don't think any carrier really has a CC to stop Kira from doing what she does. So I think that's where you're seeing it from, and she does so well at doing what she needs to do in the game. I think that's why you see her trying to be she was in pretty much every single game.
Okay.
Yeah, 100% pick rate. I think as well with the Kira, it's kind of surprising to me in two ways. I think Kira works exceptionally well with a lot of the meta support picks at the moment. A big combo that we saw was, even worse timing, we're bringing Kira and FaZe. It's just enabled Pablo to get so deep into these team fights, into these skirmishes on duo side. And then as soon as the danger arrived, as soon as the jungle rotated over, immediate pullback, and it's just completely back to safety. So and also being paired with something like the Decker, I think she's great with a Bellica as well. Two of those being the meta supports at the moment with how teams want to play. as well. They are definitely the go-tos. And also, I think there probably have been changes to the other AD carries that have kind of lowered them down. I know Murdoch had some of the changes to how his stim packs worked. Revenant lost a bit of efficiency on his items as well. So they kind of fell down the pecking order. Now it's kind of just Kira and or Drongo, essentially.
Well, and here we can see like it's either Drongo or Murdoch. Like we can see like the 40% win rate for both of those pick, and then we get like Revenant getting a few scraps, and Sparrow, like eternal like carry that doesn't see any place in any tournament, unfortunately. But it's so hard to make it work, and like player don't want to really like bother with it.
I just think we haven't found a Sparrow team comp yet, and I don't think a lot of teams practice with it too much to really figure something out for Sparrow. Because I feel like there's a lot of these comps that I saw that like Sparrow would actually be pretty okay in, and I think maybe teams should maybe in their scrims try it because sometimes it might be like one of those factors that people don't expect and kind of changes the game completely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's something you can bring out in like the group stages as well as it, you can try it out because you don't like scrims are there to practice. So when we're like trying to look at scrims, I know Mugi, you've got personal experience of analyzing scrims on your fantastic Twitch channel as well. Is that it's very difficult to kind of extrapolate that into how teams going to play on the day, right? Because scrims are all about practicing. You've probably seen some absolutely bananas team compositions in your time these games.
And bananas
so yeah,
play too. I have seen, but it's all for the practice.
Yeah, it's all practice, and that's the right mentality to have. Yeah, but I think like as you say, Efsixx, like we're just kind of waiting for the Sparrow comp to kind of come through. I think maybe the closest we got was kind of what we were running over on for the core with the Fang Booth tournaments as well, where we kind of saw the Decker going mid. You were taking like double supports. You kind of had Decker in the mid lane and Muriel, and then you have like a steal as well. So you just have so much peel, and then it was normally to pick a Revenant into. That was kind of the composition, or just to pick any sort of carry really. But I think something like that as a Sparrow would kind of work. But the problem is now that like with Rampage being Rampage, Richter hooks, stasis bombs, like it's so difficult for Sparrow to actually just exist in these team fights. That I'm not surprised teams go, you know what, I'll take the Kira because at least I've got the Shadow Glide. I'll take Murdoch because at least I've got, the bookshot. Drongo's got his gag grenades, he's got his ultimate as well to give him mobility. It's like they're just much safer options to do basically the same thing.
Yeah. I think that brings a point that I think could be interesting. Like Efsixx, you were talking about the X factor, and from the way like people played Mortgage that tournament, and she never get punished in the mid lane when she's super easy to punish. Like, I guess like this X factor is actually like sometimes like team like kind of undervalue when people don't know how to play against a pick sometimes that they could forget how to counter it. And like I will use that chance because I think like they're currently like on the PCC, they're kind of looking if they go for like 2 bans or keep like 1 bans, and also if their bans is going to be like after the first 6 first pick. And if that happens, I think like team get like a lot of leverage to kind of destroy like certain players and maybe like for them to play on certain different pick or open up like very, very strange composition when you try to ban everything and you're just like the only team with the character that you kind of know how to play. So once that decided also, like maybe that will open up like some different strategy because now we can remove like the Rampage, we can remove like the Kira, and we can like maybe open up also the champion pool for players. So something also that I'm excited about in the future.
Yeah, that's a very great point, Mugi. I think we're definitely going to see a big meta shift when it comes to that double ban when the PCC comes out with it.
Yeah, and you're going to see, I think for there, you're going to see naturally a lot of heroes that have flexibility kind of just shoot up in like the priority in the draft as well. Because it's like, you'll take picks where it's like we might see the return of like mages into the off lane as well. It'd be like, oh, we've locked in something like a gadget, even locked in a Gideon as well. I know that's a bit of a throwback as well to those that remember the early days of competitive Predecessor, the Gideon off lane. And they'd be like, okay, yeah, so they've taken the Gideon, so we're going to ban away the offlaners, try and like pinch them. It's like, oh no, we're going to take another mage because it was Gideon offlane all the time. You know, ha ha ha, joke's on you. So
Yeah.
honestly, like from like an analytical side and a breakdown point, it completely changes the entire draft dynamic as well. So I think that'll be a really awesome change, and I look forward to it.
And we can see like this all like changed out of the patch. Like I remember like 2 PCC ago, Muriel was picked 0% of the time. And now like with the TTK that have changed, like now Muriel is 40% banned. So like things can shift like super fast. And speaking of like also another shift, like something that I was very, very surprised in that tournament is we see that Bellica is banned 53% of the time. So apparently like Bellica was very targeted ban for a lot of team. But also we have the Gideon that is banned 33% of the time, which is not surprising to me. Like Gideon is always like have been on the top of the roster. But with those two picks that are usually like their mid laners, then like apparently like the team really liked the Morigesh. We see the 80% pick and the Howitzer and Gadget that before I go back for my real life stuff where like, oh, we go Gadget, we go Howitzer, that's strong pick. 7% only one game for each during the whole tournament. Like, and that's something I don't understand. Like why nobody play Gadget or Howitzer anymore and everyone is just like so hot on Morigesh when I still feel like Morigesh is very strong at scaling, but she's very, very easy to punish if you just focus her in the mid lane.
I think that has a lot to do with the mechanics of how Morgish is played. She's a very point-to-click character, and I think that's easier for mid laners to like really put a lot of pressure on the opposite mid laner. But like you said, she's very easy to punish. She really doesn't have an escape, right? She has her E, but that's really not going to really stop her from punishing her if you gank her. And I don't understand why people don't pick Gadget. I think Gadget's one of the best counter engages in the game. You can stop an entire team fight from happening just by dropping some abilities, right? And she's great at zoning. So hopefully next PCC we can see a little bit more Gadget tech, because I think she's one of the best mages to really use in this competitive level.
Okay.
Yeah, that one game as well on the Gadget was actually played by Wangle on the side of
Rogue.
Oh, this was on Rogue. Yeah, this was their quarterfinal games, and Wangle went 6-0-7. Basically, took the Morigesh build, you know, Megacosm, Wraith leggings as like the core items, and just ran the show with it as well. But then it was banished to the Shadow Realm, never to be seen or heard from again.
Yeah,
almost instantly. We had yeah, and then Gadget just vanished off the face of the earth, and which is a shame. I can understand completely why like the players gravitate to the Morigesh. Like as you say, it is a little bit of mid laner's point and click adventure at times. With the Mark, you have quite a forgiving AOE on the highs, and then you also have, of course, that ultimate as well, which probably one of the sickest like effects to see in game as well. Like that ability is phenomenal to see. Not when you're on the receiving end of it, but it's like you can appreciate it as you're about to get bodied in the mid lane at least. But
on that
as you say, like with how the Morigesh on paper is so easy to punish as well. Like when you don't have to necessarily worry about landing your abilities, like Howitzer requires a lot of positioning and a lot of awareness. Like the R2000, yeah, you can hit it, but like getting value out of your landmine, getting your slow mines as well, knowing when to ult and everything. It's like with Morigesh, I just point and click and dot and tick, 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 you're going to die, or I'm going to ult you. And that means that mid laners can kind of turn off that side of their brain and focus a lot more into their positioning, into their wave mechanics, and actually just getting more involved on the map as well, being just a lot more aware of their surroundings.
Like talking about this Morigesh ultimate, like I remember something that even worse timing I've done and I thought like it was bonkers. It's basically like they used the Morigesh ult on someone that was very low and disengaged the fight completely. They forced the epoch, and at the end of the epoch there was the long arm of the low from the Murdoch to guarantee the kill anyway. Yeah. And here you can see like this ultimate that kill people like outside the range of the team fight. Like those team, like even worse timings, like start to combine them for like super great effect and makes you have no chance to get out. And this moment was amazing. I just remember that like from your talk here.
Yeah, I think that was game 2 of that would have been even worse timing versus Professors, that semi-final. Because I remember calling that exact thing where Pablo just hit like a pixel perfect timing ultimate onto Soul Reaper, who was playing the Fae at the time, forced into Epoch. So, love moments like that. Love moments like that.
I mean, one of the things I see just from this chart is the fact that nobody picked Kai. It just irks me, right? Because I'm a person that like understand Kai has just so much potential in him, and like he's a very strong character. And personally, I think he's better than Crunch in what he needs to do throughout the entire game, instead of just having different spikes into the match. Just because he could shred tanks, he could shred squishies, and his ult is probably one of the most underrated things in the game because you can completely stop a lot of things from going off. But I think they should try Kai a little bit more. Maybe not build him full assassin. Maybe not build him full tank. Try and go the little bruiser's way because he does a lot of work in a lot of these games that I play with him.
Well, I feel like the Kai, and I will go for like a little shot at top players. They don't want to play under 144 like FPS, and with the Q like FPS bug, like top players are just like no. I want my comfort. I can't play that character, basically.
I want my comfort. Right. I can see that too as well, because they don't give him enough attention in their scrims and in their other games. So I can see where people are not like, I'm not comfortable with him. We're just not going to play him, right?
Yeah, I'm wondering with the rise of FaZe, you maybe might see a spot for Chimera. I think, as you say, like I can understand the potential, but I think the problem that Chimera has at the moment is just that other junglers just do his job better. Per se, so I think I can understand why Crunch is valued over the Chimera, because like the Crunch just gives you such a good engage, the knock up as well, just able to put down a lot of AoE, can be flexed into solo lane as well, which is where we more traditionally see the Crunch pick as well. So you can kind of like, if you're taking a Crunch and a Grux, for instance, you have pure flexibility on who you're taking into what role. And that obviously depends on the situation as well. But I think Kai is definitely on like the cusp of greatness. So I wouldn't be surprised to see maybe like an indirect buff to him. Like if they change some of the items that he likes to build, it might be like, oh, actually Kai is all of a sudden like somewhat okay right now. But I think at the moment, as long as FaZe is kind of left to this pocket pick, I don't think we're seeing much Kai for now.
Yeah, FaZe definitely does counter Kai. FaZe counters pretty much everybody with that pull. She's able to literally bring you to safety. Like, come here, don't worry about it. She's the best babysitter in Pred. We all know it.
And also best tag team duo as well, because the problem with Kai, as we know, you use the ambush, you go in. The only way you're getting out is either on a stretcher or you're sending them on the stretcher, basically. But with a FaZe, with the link, pull that Kai straight back out as soon as they got the kill. So, it works both ways.
Right? So we'll see.
Yeah, and I think also like you mentioned something good like about like the jungle pick. Like I feel like also like sometimes like teams overvalue the Crunch and they can like draft div themselves by going with a Crunch in a comp that the Crunch can't play. And so I also like something that I would like maybe jungler to explore a little bit more is sometimes like when they already have the Richter in the enemy team, the Drongo, and like everything that can stop you from like actually like performing as a Crunch. Maybe that could be good to have like other option than just like brute forcing the Crunch and then like pass the 15 minutes because like you're playing your lane, then you're useless for the rest of the match.
I think people also underrate that cleanse that Kai has on a cooldown, right? Like in a lot of these comps that I've seen like inside the tournament, I feel like that cleanse right there could have changed a lot of team fights because you can get out of like a Richter's ultimate, or like you can get out of just somebody's ultimate or ability to really change them. Like, oh my goodness, he didn't get stunned out of that. Okay, now we have to do something different. So I don't know, just a food for thought for the players out there, just to kind of run different comps to really test out what you can really do.
Efsixx is manifesting Chimera picks at this point.
I'm manifesting it because I believe it's there.
And so let's go into the win rate of those different pick. And on the bottom, like the right end of the spectrum, like the value means less. Like for instance, like this 100% win rate on the Kalari and the Gadget is just that they got played one game, so it doesn't really mean anything. But
Shout out to Wangle.
But this 100% win rate on the Rampage actually means something because he was there like 40% of the game. So if you weren't like banning Rampage when you were second pick, you were doing something wrong. And yeah. Just
Yeah, and it also helps as well that we have some nutty Rampage players in our events as well. So, I mean, this is like to be expected, right? With how good Rampage is, like teams know that they value in a jungler. Can you play Rampage when we're going to prioritize it? Yes, you can. Fantastic, it's going to work. So yeah, I mean, as Efsixx alluded to, like Rampage has been hit it feels like so many times with item changes, with abilities as well, but just what he brings to the team with that stun, with that terrain scaling, Ray showing what they can do in a split pushing composition as well. The Rampage is the king of the jungle and here to stay, honestly, and I'm all here for it. Like watching good Rampage players hit some of the boulder tosses from like the next postcode over, watching like clutch behemoths outside of like in these objective fights. It's hype as heck, man. You know, I love to see it, but hey, I'm the one just shouting about it. I'm not the one who's taking said boulder tosses or rampages blinking on me in the game.
I mean, I think the only way to nerf Rampage is to nerf the stun on that rock because you don't have to necessarily level up your E or your RMB to clear the jungle with Rampage very precisely. But the fact that you level up your rock and then within like 7 minutes into the game you have a 2 second stun for free, that's unbelievably wild in my opinion.
and long range on top of that.
Right.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
But,
you've got set up like you have the combos of, and also like Rampage just combos so well. Like taking a Rampage and a Riptor in the same team guarantees the Riplash, or it guarantees the Boulder Toss if the Riplash is hit. Take it with a Decker as well, the Stasis Bomb. You have such long range potential with your initiations. Like jungle fights just become so dangerous as well. Like you know, there are so many good reasons to take Rampage right now.
I want to just like also like for those watching us in the chat, a little disclaimer on those data, because of course like here we're showing data, but that's definitely like not the truth. It's only like 15 data points in a very specific meta of top players, and also like naturally like the better team, like even worse timing, are going to skew the data in up. Like for instance, we can see like the Shinbi and the FaZe being at 75% and 71% win rate, where like every single time those picks were being picked by even worse timing, that's a win. So it's still like we can extract some IDs, but it's not like an absolute truth. So we have to like understand that, they respect that. But there's still like a few things that I think are very, very interesting. Like one thing I want to point out, like there is like numerous, but like one is I still like every single PCC, I feel like I say the same thing. NA players love Drongo every single time. Like Drongo has a shit win rate. I'm sorry to say it, but Drongo every single time has a shit win rate. Here we can see like when you compare like Murdoch and Drongo, which was like the two options to face Kira, and everyone is like, yeah, but Drongo has the grenade to silence the ultimate. Yeah, but doesn't matter. Like, I'm sorry, Drongo is a good pick, but in certain comp, in certain situation, it's not a go-to default pick, and we need to change that, please.
All right,
Yeah,
Mugi, I'm not gonna let you just run over an A right now. Okay. There's a couple brain cells that go into that, you know. But I do understand Jungle has the lower win rate. I think it comes from, like you said, the team comp doesn't need it. Is it actually viable in there? And just give us a little bit to work it out, okay?
It's fine. I mean, what was the copy pasta I started on Fang Booth as well? It's like water is wet, the sky is blue. We play Drongo Murdoch in EU. That's basically how it goes. Before the likes of Kira was released as well. So you know, hey.
Yeah.
Honestly, like you know, the Drongo pick I think it's kind of the same with the Murdoch. It's just a comfort pick for some people, like especially Murdoch, especially if your name happens to be Lakenator as well. Like the Murdoch is such a huge pick. So I completely understand players wants to take, and also you know like OG Paragon character as well. Like if you were playing AD carry in old Paragon as well, chances are you were playing Murdoch or you were playing Twin Blast essentially. So until we see Twin Blast make their appearance, whenever hopefully they do, because Twin Blast was my old main. You know, first level 10 mastery. Hashtag not bragging, but. until that time, it's like Murdoch is just old reliable at this point. Literally opening the case, and there it is. Still have the long arm of the law, still have the buckshot, you still have the same character. It's just kind of plug and play into different situations. But I would like to kind of skew the conversation as well. One thing I did notice is this Richter pick as well, because the Richter throughout PCC found itself played a lot, quite a bit in the jungle. As you say, it has the with the graph going left to right, it has the fourth highest draft presence in the game, but a 31% win rate as well. Yeah, so 87% pick, and then just a couple of bans here and there on the top, just sprinkled in. But the Richter, dropping all the way down to 31% as well.
Yeah. I think it kind of comes down to the fact that most of the time when Rampage was in the game, Richter was there to counter it, but Rampage is so dominant currently that you de facto have almost 53% of your game that are just a loss. And so I don't think it comes down to the fact that the Richter is actually bad. I just think it comes down from the fact that the Rampage is 100% win rate. That would be my take here.
True.
Right, and the Rampage rock is easier to hit than the Richter's hook. Let's be honest, right? And Rampage ultimate is, I think, more impactful around the map, because once you ult and just jump halfway across the map into the backline, I mean, that's not better than Richter's hook, or that is definitely better than Richter's hook.
Instant boulder toss on the ultimate as well. But I don't think Mugi wants to turn this into the Rampage fan club hour. That's kind of what we've been talking about, at least. One observation that I did make that with the losses as well is that obviously, Richter was on the receiving end of the Rampage as well. But I found that in just watching the games and looking at the stats from the data, whenever the Richter lost hard as well. Like, the Richter would struggle in these games. Like, I feel like that's kind of like why you're picking the Richter, right? It's to engage these fights, be the front line, hit the big value skewers. But the problem is that if your team's behind and you can't hit the Riplash or you can't hit the skewers, you can't do Richter things, you kind of just get blown up.
And I will add something to that. On the game I've watched, sometimes I was okay, you pick a full team that have absolutely no mobility, and most of the time Richter was in that team. When against it, there was the Rampage, there was the Decker, there was the Sevrog, there was everyone that can chase you down to earth. And when that happened, Richter is not gonna have a good time, because the positioning needs to be stellar. But when you're facing a Decker or even a Gideon sometimes, even if your positioning is stellar, they can just chase you. And if you fall a teeny bit behind, like you said, you're just gonna get rolled down. Richter is really a pick that doesn't work well from being from behind, and especially in those comp that can just chase you for the rest of the day. So on that, I also think maybe Richter was overvalued a little bit, which Richter is a very, very strong pick, but it's not self-sufficient like a Rampage is. You still need to have a comp around, and you still need also to not have too many chaser in the enemy team, in a sense. Also, there is still two more little things that I find very interesting. One is how Crunch and Sevrog basically got hidden the whole tournament by the Snoop on the Shinbi. So we can see that those picks didn't really perform as well as they used to be, and maybe we can expect, at least I hope, with the change of TTK, this pressure that the Snoop shown, maybe that will shake up a little bit the meta on the offlane, and we're not just a Crunch Sevrog facing each other. But who knows?
I mean, that's just the pay-per-view match that we all wanted to see. It's Crunch versus the embodiment of death, every game. But this is fine, as you say, with the meta changing as well. So I do like the fact that we get to see the versatility in the solo lane, because I think just historically speaking, from a MOBA perspective, the solo lane, the off lane, the top lane, whatever you want to call it, whatever iteration you want to, normally the people who play these roles as their mains have have vast champion oceans or hero oceans. They can play near of anything in that offlane because it's so matchup dependent. But I think with the Shinbi kind of rising up with this split pushing thing, maybe we will be seeing a lot more split pushers. Maybe seeing some more Feng Mao, maybe seeing some more Grux as well, or even taking other Mage is back up there as well. So obviously, but at the same time, I'm going to miss my crunch Sephiroth games.
And the last thing that I think I want to talk about is, like, I've read in the Twitch chat during the tournament that so many people say but people don't understand the greatness of Faye. Faye's so underrated. Like, you need to really, like, she's so super strong. Okay, maybe she is, but once again, in competitive sitting, like, she's not really performing. Like, here, 0% win rate on Faye, and it's still like present in 40% of the game. She got picked 40% of the game. So this 0% is actually like a true 0%. It's not like just like one game and she lost. So I still feel like having reclamation in the game, a coordinated team, it's a very easy pick to pressure, to gank. I still feel like it's, and that's why, like, I'm also like baffled. Like, Faye is picked over a gadget, for instance, and she's not performing. So I feel like sometimes also, like, when it's not working, like, switch stuff around and try to see if something else like can maybe work. Like, I feel like some teams can really like focus, oh, we need to pick the Faye. It's supposed to work, but it didn't really. Why didn't the Faye work? Like, maybe you have like some inputs on that. Like, for me, I feel like reclamation is too strong. It's very, very hard to find like those right team fight because the team is going to not let you have those good fly trap. But I remember like the fly trap in the finals, like one fly trap can win you a game if it works, but it didn't seem to actually work.
Which it didn't.
Yeah.
I think people just play Faye in a typical mage kind of way, kind of just showing themselves. I think as playing Faye, especially with the fly trap, you want to kind of give yourself time to make the enemy don't like understand you're there yet, right? Because if the enemy knows you're there, you're just coming, rotating from mid lane, coming from the back line, like, oh, I'm gonna run up, the Faye's running up. Obviously, you have your ult up, you're gonna use your ult, right? But now if I come through the fog wall, or if I come with a blink ult, now my ult's a little bit more dangerous because now that's a little bit more time for you to actually react, and my ult could probably actually go off, right? So I think it's not necessarily Faye in itself, but the positioning and how players are actually using the Faye into their team fights.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe a bit of time to kill kind of sneaks into that as well. With I feel like the Faye was good when we were in like the lower time to kill because that fly trap was near enough to death sentence to whoever you pulled in. But now this time, like, you have to literally hit them onto the mid laner. You have to hit them onto the carry, which granted, you should be. As the mage, you are responsible for being the primary magic damage dealing character on your team. If you are taking a traditional mage, of course. But also with the Faye as well, maybe, this is like kind of me just kind of spitballing here, but maybe there is a bit of play of the game mentality coming in as well. It's like, I think this maybe might be the case more for pub games than like, in the top competitive sphere as well, but it's kind of waiting for that perfect ultimate, waiting for that perfect ability. And it's like, might hesitate like, oh, I could throw this ability out now and grab 2, but I could also throw it out and grab 5. And I could have like the real hype moments. I don't think that really necessarily happened in PCC, but probably like in pub games that might be another thing as well. And I think that might actually bleed over a little bit.
Nah, I think it happens in PCC. I see some people saying that to themselves.
Nice. So
yeah, we need to make sure TJ is going to get evicted in a week. So we've got to hit some absolute dope fly traps and make him kick him out of his house.
very, very nice. So let's move on into like I think it's the team table. So here, like, it's a lot of numbers. The important things is can try to get like extract like some information about like the performance. And like the first thing that is amazing is, as you can see on the right hand side of the table, you have the objective ratio and the structure ratio. So that means it's like even worse timing, like gets 6.6 structures while their opponent leaving only 1 to the enemy team, and they got like 3.44 objective while they only leave 1 to the enemy team. And you can see like they're so ahead of everyone else. Like, I think that's the biggest ratio we've ever had in a PCC tournament. Like, they're so on top of getting structure out of the map, protecting their own structure, getting objective, not leaving objective to the enemy teams. It's actually crazy. And we see that also like in terms of their farming, like breaching this 20,000 gold per 10 minutes, so 2,000 gold per minute as a team overall. I think like there was only like 2 other teams that actually like managed to do that. I think it was Royalty and Team Immune. So yeah, it's excellent farming, but complete control over objective and pressuring the map on the structures. So yeah, they won everything.
Objective wins games, people. I tell people all the time, it's like whatever team's leading with objectives or structures, they're gonna win most of the time, right? They have the pressure around the map, they have everything going for them. Okay, they're down 3-5 kills. It really doesn't matter at this point. They're up in pretty much what's important in the game. So
yeah,
absolutely. So just having a look at the data as well. One thing that it catches my eye as well is I know we've kind of spoken ad infinitum about, you know, even worse timing, Data Lake and the boys, because I imagine like when it comes to data like this, obviously having 7 points of data is better than having 2 as well for like, you know, ratios and average. So take that as you will. But even stuff like, you know, double vision down at the bottom of the leaderboards as well. So when I was watching their game, like you have to remember that these guys came in as the 8th seed. So in a traditional single bracket, they're going up against the
first seed,
the number 1 seed. Yes, they were against Rogue in this game, in this tournament. Sorry, and even though like, you know, they're gonna go in as like kind of heavy underdogs, but like watching the game, I'm kind of glad that the stats do back it up as well. Is that, you know, their gold per 10 minutes. It's still in a pretty decent spot, and that's against, you know, one of the strongest teams in the tournament.
Yeah.
At the start as well, like with what turned out, and you know, seeing how they were playing in the replay as well, like their kill participation is remains one of the highest. You know, one of the only teams to actually break plus 60% in terms of, you know, where those kills are being spread. So you can just kind of infer, for even though only 2 games of data against one of the strongest teams in the tournament, they're still, you know, playing. You can see team play here. You can see that some quite efficient farming as well, especially when compared with their peers who also were eliminated from the quarterfinals.
Yeah. And also, like, we can see that Professor is a team known to play like with a lot of assists, like most of the time, like people get the kill together. And here we can see also like the stat on the side of Rogue, the 66 kill participation, which is like the team with the highest kill participation across their members. So they kind of grouped up and get killed together. And like one last stat that I think was actually like very telling is I feel like there is such a huge cut. Like when you look at the number of kills per 10 minutes, like you see that even worse timing is at 7.4, Professor is at 6.9. So 2 teams that actually like very proficient that create kills, and then the rest of the field is around 4.5. Like that's actually like a 2.5 like kill less per 10 minutes on the other team. So like here we can definitely like extract like some play style. I think like the biggest difference with like between Professor and even worse timing here, it kind of comes down to the number of deaths, of course. So that's why like the KDA is so strong on even worse timing. But I'm very surprised about like this, like there is a clear cut. Like normally like all the teams are kind of around, like you go slowly, but here there is a clear cut between the top 2 on kills and the rest of the crew.
And you can see as well, though, the Professor's assists, you could tell, like you were saying, like early on in the cast, that like they're a very team fight oriented pretty much team, right? So you can see like they're the one that has the best assists, right? So that means like they're all sharing that team fight mentality and they're all getting those assists off of that. But like you said, though, the structure damage is really where you see that split push from even worse timing and where they're shining a little bit better.
Yeah. And the farming.
Yeah, and going back to the Professors as well, like looking at their, like comparing with even worse timing as well, like the deaths remain near enough, you know, just under double as well. And I think, you know, as I say, we can kind of the play style you would infer from that is that perhaps in this PCC event is the Professors were taking more risks with their gameplay. They weren't looking for, you know, the 70-30 opportunities where it's like, we're going to take this fight and we are very likely to win it. It was more of like, we might be looking more at the 40-60s where like we could try something here. It's a risk. It might not work, but if it pays off, it's going to be massive. So even worse timing with their low deaths. You can look at it and say like, they're taking fights that they know that only they're going to win, or with how they were actually winning their games, it was like any fight that they took with the lead that they were able to generate was just a winning matchup. So yeah, this is like really interesting to kind of sink your teeth into.
Yeah. And now we can going to move on onto the next slide where we like usually in the past it was like the player stat card and it still is, but I have revamped a little bit the slides for those that are like used to watch the meta talk, and I decided to combine it with different stats. So we have this is the stat per role, and so we still have on the right side of the screen like the cards for every single players where you can still get the information of like, once again, all those stats are per 10 minutes. And we have the kill, the death, number of assists, the KDA, and the kill participation. And then you have like additional stat like the number of CS per 10 minutes and the number of hero damage. And also like the pick they played the most, which is like the little hero portrait next to their name. And then on the left side, I decided to bring up like the amount of time like each item has been picked, and compared to the previous like meta talk, this time I decided to break them down by role, which I think is more meaningful and more digestible. And true, Sismic. And then also like we have the pick rate of every single character that were played on the role. And so here we can see that we have Kira, the 100% win rate, the Murdoch, the Drongo, and the Revenants. So that can also like give us like some insight on the item pick. That was a mouthful.
The Liberator's there for that CC. So CC is still one of those things that you have to worry about. So
yeah. To be fair, like the maximum amount that you could have picked any item is 30, because there was 15 matches in the tournament and there's like 2 carry per game. So we can see that like Liberator 14 matches, and only like the pacifier I think was picked twice by Pablo, and I think that's basically it. But yeah, like the crest is really like one-dimensional when it comes to the carry role. And then like also like the build, as we can see, like very few items for the whole tournament. Actually only 4, 7, 10, 12 item different picked overall during the whole tournament for the carry role, which is kind of limited, to say the least, despite the fact that we picked almost like every single carry that are in the roster.
Yeah, I think one thing that I want to bring up about with AD carry items is that it doesn't surprise me to see kind of the narrow band really of items that get picked. Of course, it depends on the carry that you're picking as well. Kind of, when looking at the builds, like, Kira being like, 100, having that 100% pick rate, they're the ones that are going to be picking up, the Terminuses, the Vanquishers, and all that malarkey, and also, like Imperator kind of like a core item build as well for the Kiras as well. But the thing with to remember about AD carry as a role is that as the primary source of damage on the team, you're kind of limited to what is the most effective in terms of DPS that you can actually pump out. And so you will find that in other MOBAs as well, like going to Smite, which as like I have experience with shoutcasting as well, is that there's always the eternal dance between kind of crit builds versus power builds, right? It's on hit versus crit. Essentially, it's like, right, am I just going to be nuking squishies with like my insane crit chance and having my bonuses to my crit damage, or am I just going for like shredding ones as well? And it's literally just purely dependent on DPS and numbers. So for like the maths nerds out there, there's probably a reason why they are AD carry mains, most of them, or closeted AD carry mains at the least, because it's like, I need the most efficient amount of DPS possible for my character in this situation. So I think that kind of explains why like the numbers are so big, right? Looking at the items, with the Silver Bird, the Vanquisher, Terminus, Perforated, Tainted Rounds kind of are those like situational ones you can kind of slot into the builds as well. And then also Imperator as well, rocking up.
Yeah.
And I mean that Vanquisher, I guess they fixed a little bit of it because it's still working pretty much as intended, and that Vanquisher could come in very clutch sometimes, and you're just like, oh man, that person is just almost dead, right? And that vanquisher kicks in. I think that's really why you see that up there. Just, even if there's a chance to maybe potentially get a kill onto my AD carry just by getting them low enough, I think that's really why it's there as such a big item, especially paired with that lightning hawk.
Yeah, and if we look a little bit on the side of the stat, I think like there is like a few things that we can extract from that. Like the most obvious one is we look at the hero damage of Pablo and the hero damage of the all three other characters, like Lyconator, Haru, Survivor. They're all kind of like in the same pocket in terms of hero damage, and Pablo is like 4,000 more damage per 10 minutes. So the guy is a monster. Also, I think like a big part of it is that he can just like go bonkers deep because he has a phase with him most of the time. But still, like 4,000 is not just the phase difference. Like it's definitely there because you like the increased damage from like the link, also like the ultimate that can be used on you. But it's still like not only that. Like the guy is a monster. We see also like, in terms of CS, 10 CS per 10 minutes, or ahead of anyone else on the top 4 team in the tournament. And the last stat that I think is actually like very, very telling is when you look at Lyconator and Haru, they both have 75% kill participation in their team. So maybe like true, their team playing around those two carries, but maybe like 75%, maybe it's a little bit too much. And we need to like maybe relieve a little bit of pressure from those players and like have other like playmakers like stepping up in that regard for those teams.
Yeah, I think this is definitely like a playstyle thing. Like we've said about how Dirty taking the boys having Lakenator as that kind of late game insurance. So with the kind of like the low KDA kind of things per 10 minutes as well, does say to me that like Lakenator is definitely more about the farming game, and then you're going to see his kill participation kind of skyrocket when we get into the 5 versus 5s because the Lakenator is going to be right in the middle of it. Same with Haru as well, like you know with the C, we're very much same as Lakenator as well, just going and being more involved in these team fighting as well. But yeah, I think that it does show you like kind of the priority. Like Pablo with with that face pocket can play full balls to the wall, so to speak, with their play style. They can take so many risks and know they can get away with it, which it's not surprising to me to see the 3.2 kills per 10 minutes, but also Survivor as well. Like you can't sleep on the Professor's AD carry either. So like with a 2.8 kills per 10 minutes as well, does have like kind of joint CS with Lake Nature as well, but actually with the less kill participation, which is an interesting flavor to it.
I mean that comes from just Survivor in general, just being more of a not necessarily, I don't want to say passive, but very situational and an advantageous fighter. As you see that in a lot of his matches, like if I can't get a kill, I'm not going to like.
Yeah.
You'll see it from his stream sometimes too as well, or just him just playing in general. He's like, if I can't get a kill, I'm not gonna. So I think that's really where that kill participation comes from. Maybe if he gets a little bit more aggressive, we could kind of see him go with a little bit more increased stats, but that could also be like, I might die more as well. So
On that side, I would say like Survivor is actually like pretty aggressive, I feel like, especially with Crazy Fool being his support, and you can see that he's actually like the highest like deaths per 10 minutes, and I think it's kind of come from that play style, but overall Professor I feel like is a very like, they force stuff. Not always when they have like the big advantage, they just force stuff. And so that shows in there, like they have kills that are very close to even worse timing, but their death count is really high as well. And so like we really have like this aggressive playstyle. But of course, it's not just diving towers. And sometimes we have seen like during the tournament, sometimes like Survivor being a little bit stubborn against Pablo. Just, okay, I started that fight. I will keep that fight until I'm dead or he's dead. And when the guy is like 1k up, like probably in gold, you're going to lose that trade most of the time. But
it's all about sending a message, Mugi.
True.
It's all about sending a message.
like, I'm the better AD. No, I am.
So let's move on to the next role, which is support. And so here in support, we have like 7 different picks that have been played on the support role. Of course, Decker being like the clear winner once again. And then we get FaZe that got picked up quite a lot, mostly by even worse timing in that regard. And the other like little aspect that I think it's already like we can extract from the data is like every single crest evolution, all 6 of them I've seen play in the tournament, which I think is phenomenal, which tells me that on that regard, like Omeda has done a good job. Like every single crest he use have their interest, and they're like you use them depending on what you're facing, what you want for your team, and that's very nice to see. Like this diversity of crest.
Yeah, for sure. It just goes to show truly like a very healthy state for supports. Don't get me wrong, right? Not completely healthy because it's kind of like Dynamo's being picked up as near enough first items on a lot of supports. You know, your Bellicas, your Deckers are taking them purely because, you know, hey, it's like anyone I immobilize, everyone just deals bonus damage to you. Like, why would you not take Dynamo on these aggressive supports, really? And then I'm guessing like seeing some of the other items as well, like the Marshals, your Wellsprings and stuff like that is kind of like for your Muriels that kind of sneak in here or there as well. So like there's a lot of like good versatility, and it does feel like your support your great supports are going to know exactly how to itemize because there's a lot that is viable to them to itemize. It's just purely on a case by case basis.
Yeah.
I think also Marshall being picked up a lot. The range is actually pretty small on Marshall. And sometimes I see people pick it up with being a support, but actually won't be near their AD carry a lot of the times in those fights. I'm like, okay, then now you're going into an item that really doesn't help you out if you're actually not near the people you want to buff with, right? And I see that a lot from Decker players. So this is one of the things just to watch out for. Like, make sure you're inside that actual area.
Yeah. And if we move on into the stats, like not a lot of specific stat. I think the only like little things we can kind of point out is Toasty, because the 4.5 word per 10 minutes, which is quite under the rest of the cast. So maybe something that can be improved on there. And also, like we were discussing the previous slide, that Haru had a lot on his shoulder with his 75% kill participation, and here we can see Tekken Kid on Rogue like 81%. So it feels like Rogue is really like leaning heavily into this dual lane, and that can be a playstyle. But I remember that Professor was kind of having this playstyle in the early days of Professors, and they have to be careful because if the enemy team kind of start to see that type of pattern, like the enemy team can abuse that. So that's something that apparently like the move of Tekken Kid into support, it's actually like working well for them because like Tekken Kid is very involved in everything. But that means that maybe also like somewhere else on the map we have trouble of creating space and actual activity. So that's something that they could look for and try to improve on.
Yeah, and I think as well, it's kind of like with how the game is played at the moment. If you're wondering why, like when you watch PCC, when you watch For the Core, it's like, why on earth do we keep watching the duo lane? That's because that's where everyone kind of dies, right? Like you see junglers over there. You've got the Fang Tooth as well, which is the premier early game objective to be picked up as well. Solo lane, sorry guys, absolutely love you guys and girls, but the duo lane is where we focus on for the first 10 minutes because that's where like junglers just naturally path over, mid laners will naturally rotate, and yeah, I think with how Rogue play as well, like getting Haru and Tekken Kid ahead in this lane, especially with the PCC as well. Also, like with how they've been playing in terms of their team play as well, it's like the jungler will prioritize duo side. Wangle kind of stays farming in the mid lane and then makes their moves over once they've got like like the Mega Cosm online if they're playing the Morigesh or stuff like that. So it definitely is how the team play here. So that the 81% kill participation is really quite high, especially when compared with the others. Because even though like a lot of other teams do focus around their duo side, Rogue just kind of throw everything into their duo side.
Yeah, or maybe like they throw like on different lane, but it's only like on the duo side they also find success. Like we would have to watch the matches to be sure like in which direction it's leaning. But yeah, it's you can read the stat both ways. Moving on into the mid lane, where like here we have like Morigesh, then Gideon, the Fae, the Bellica, a little bit of a Wither and Gadget, but really like Morigesh being the star of the show, like we've seen already like the 80% pick rate. And yeah, Mega Cosm, Rest Legging, Epoch, Combustion. Lack of variety, I would say, on the caster pick, in a sense, kind of like the carry. But yeah, like Mega Cosm Wrestling is everywhere on everyone, which I think is a little bit sad in a sense.
I
Yeah,
mean, they just provide so much that you need from a mid laner, right?
Yeah.
So it's like,
mhm.
if it works kind of thing.
True. And like I'm not blaming the player at all. It's just like I love when there is like, of course, like that's the dream world when there is like a lot of different tech you can adapt on the fly during the match what is happening. And as we have seen, I think on the support, like okay, the Dynamo is a strong option, but then like things are pretty open. There is different, but it's in the nature of the role. I feel like on the mid lane, we're kind of like probably can improve a little bit better on that aspect. Also, like in terms of crest, as we can see, like Epoch, Soulbearer, and that's one obelisk. My mistake. One obelisk has been picked. I would assume maybe probably like from one of the Bellica that's being played, but yeah, it's kind of like maybe like those options are just too strong, and there is like nothing to compete against those. Once that,
Also
yeah,
surprised,
yeah,
sorry, Mugi, but surprised Tainted Scepter is not built a little bit more, especially with the Rampagers always being around. Like, I
true.
feel like that's just something you should be like, yeah, I'm not dealing with the healing Rampage just on me the entire time. So,
Yeah,
Yeah,
tend
and this kind of just like slot into builds as well, right? You do go for like as a Megacosm Wraith leggings as your core items, and then it's like, oh, then we're just gonna slide the Tainted Scepter in, depending on how much that you need it at whatever time as well, because Tainted Scepter as an item is also in a pretty good spot. So a bit like Tainted Rounds for carries, right? You kind of have to pay the tax, but you're kind of okay with it, really.
right.
yeah. And so here we see like a little bit of the stats, and I say like one stat that is very interesting is how Shin is actually like very low on CS, and that means that probably like there is like these different playstyle of like the mid laner that farm like from Dirty Lake and the Boys and Rogue, like you were saying, like a little bit more passive playstyle. They just like love their farm, get ahead. While we do have like Shin and Soul Reaper that are more like probably like more active in terms of rotation to get their lanes, like outside lanes, like a head kit, but they have to sacrifice a little bit of their own farm to get there. So here I would say like probably like two philosophy that are facing
Yeah.
each other. And we see that also in the hero damage department. Like the hero mid laner that rotate have more damage than the hero mid laner that stay more on lane and farming. Which is the best?
Yeah.
I have no clue.
Well, going by who won the event or not is a kind of a sample thing. That's why you can look at it. But yeah, I think that like looking at the stats, it kind of all does make sense. Really, is that Shin just was put on Morogesh duty the entire tournament. Really, I don't really recall off the top of my head Shin playing anything other than Morogesh. So Shin just doing their job as the primary magic damage of the team as well. But then you look at the likes of Soul Reaper as well, like probably one of the biggest roamers from the mid lane as well. Like especially like you could see why Soul Reaper is like the Gideon is prioritized for the Professor's team as well, because Soul Reaper on Gideon is a completely different beast. And it's, I think it wouldn't surprise me if that one Gideon ban was actually against the Professors. I don't know I can't remember where that ban specifically went. But it explains, like, why Soul Reaper has like that 3.0 assists as well. Pretty high kill participation as well. But yeah, you can't get away with it for free. You have to sacrifice a little bit of that CS.
I mean, he's definitely. I don't necessarily think it's because he's roams. I think he takes very good advantages, like whenever he has a chance. That's what you see. He has a pretty high K kill and assist, and his assists are way out of the roof, right? He's just able to kind of spread his love throughout the map. But you can also see like he probably gets pressurized a lot more than his other team throughout his deaths, right? He's kind of there, and I think everybody knows like, okay, we take kind of Soul Reaper out of the game, we can kind of do what we need to do during objectives as well.
Yeah, like Soul Reaper is a very key player for the Professors as well. Like, I prioritize in the draft, and unfortunately, that does kind of put a bit of a target on your head. But going by like how Soul Reaper plays, like he kind of just rolls with it, he just goes with it, and it's like, sure, if you're focusing me, let my dual lane get ahead, let Guru get ahead, let IDOC start to carry. It's like,
And it's interesting because Soul Reaper in the chat said that he's actually anti-roam. And I have to call foul play on that because like multiple game I see Soul Reaper at level 3 is in the dual lane. So if it's not roam, like what it is.
I'm sorry, but like you're playing Gideon as your most played and you're in the dual lane at 3 minutes. You're roam.
That man clears wave. He hits Q, RB, and hits E to the dual lane every time. Don't lie to chat, Soul. Come on now.
I mean, it's good. It's entertaining. It's it's a lot of fun to cast as well. So I'm not complaining.
Yeah, and I think like actually like with the way the map is on Predecessor, like actually like you don't lose that much by going for roaming while you can gain a lot. So I think like there is definitely like potential for this type of playstyle. If you want to duel Soul, it's the off lane, not the mid lane. You choose the wrong role, buddy.
Right? You better go to offlane with that Gideon, bud.
Speaking of roaming, then we have the jungler, where like here we have so the Rictor, the Rampage, the Crunch, a little bit of Feng Mao, Steel, Shinbi, and Kalari. Definitely like the top 3 pick were the Rampage, Rictor, and Crunch. Here we feel like only like 13 picks for the Tainted Guard. So I feel like we have a much more diverse situation, but we also have like more diverse pick between like the Bruiser, the Magical Bruiser, Physical Bruiser, Physical Assassin with the Kalari, Magical Assassin with the Shinbi, the Tank with the Rampage, but the Physical Tank and the Magical Tank. So naturally, more different type of character brings like more diverse itemization overall. Still, Sapphire's Mantle, like a big winner. When we've seen like the Razorback was like just dominating the meta so much back in the days. So it's nice to see that like once again, like here the quest change, at least on tanks actually like also having like a good impact. And there is like some switching around, which I really like to see.
Yeah, that I think the change to the Razorback, just giving you extra armor, does not beat the Sapphire's Mantle. One, you get true damage, and then after you get that, you get a permanent increase in health. I mean, you can't. Obviously, the Overlord is there at 8 times, so I mean, you're stacking your Sapphire's Mantle to get more power into your Overlords. I think one of the things though I'm really a little bit weird about is I would actually thinking so many people building Fire Blossom, you'll see a little bit more of Crystalline Curse just because it just takes off of that passive, right? So I'm just a little bit like, I mean, you could just kind of counter the Fire Blossom with Crystalline Curse, but I'm not a jungler, so I can't speak too much on it.
And then by moving on into the stat, like what like is bonkers to me is 3 jungler out of the 4 have Rampage as their most picked jungler. Like, and we've seen that Rampage was 100% win rate. Like, how did Rampage kept getting fed to those players all the time? They just like destroyed with them like every single time. Like we can see like Ray KDA is just disgusting. 7.2, like it's just insane. Like the guy never died. He was like everywhere all the time, winning 4v5 with his team. It's yeah, the guy is a monster.
I mean, Rampage has been like the #1 jungler for the past, like since Predecessors came out. He's been like the top jungler.
King of the jungle. It's in the passive.
Yeah. Like, why is this guy not banned? Like, if it's not Sev because you don't want somebody, I'm going for Rampage every time unless I have first pick. You know, like, I don't get it. I don't know how this man's picked so much.
Yeah. Well, maybe we'll see a nerf before the next tournament, and if we don't, like, people prepare like one of your 2 bans to be like on the Rampage probably.
You can't nerf the man.
Attack, you know. Or that. Or like we should start introducing like player bans. That just might solve it, honestly. Because honestly, like we have some insane junglers that we've watched in the PCC, and sometimes you're like, you know what? If we just ban the player, like force them onto a sub, that might be more effective than trying to take away 1 pick from them. when it's like, oh, I've just got this entire ocean of champions available to me.
Yeah, we should tell Joelster, make him just start banning players, see what their subs can do.
Gotta like draw straws on camera before the game starts. Like, you know.
You take all the players and you go for a draft with captain, and you draft the players and you shuffle everything around. But
That would be actually dope.
The other way around it is to introduce Nemesis draft. You know, that's like you pick your team comp and then you play your opponent's team comp.
oh,
You actually pick for your opponents.
that could be very spicy for
Yeah,
like a
but to make it
friendly
work, you
event.
can't tell it's a Nemesis draft until the game actually starts.
Okay,
You know, so that's how you get people off the rampage.
true. So let's move on to the last role, that is the offlane. And here, like once again, a lot of diversity. No item has been picked more than 9 times, which I think is very good. But not a lot of diversity in terms of pick. We still have like 7 different pick, but it was really like Sevrog, Shinbi once again that got picked the most of the tournament. And here we can see like the Snoop approaching almost the 10 CS per minute, like Sangral in a sense, with the 97 CS per 10 minutes, which is
Disgusting.
ridiculous.
Insane.
This is disgusting.
Insane.
A funny factoid as well for you fine gentlemen, as well as I'm trying to find the slide actually where it was. So I'm going to keep on talking whilst I'm just trying to find where it was. Okay, you know what? Come back to me. I'm on Omeda Studios at the moment. I have got the scoreboards from all of the PCC games. There was one thing that stood out to me, and I just need to find it.
Sure.
But
And we
look
can-
how much hero damage he's doing, right?
Yeah.
And he's not even in all these kill participations, but he's still somehow just doing a ridiculous amount of damage, right?
It's the poking, I guess. Like line tempo on cooldown and hitting like almost like 85% of them, even max range.
Yeah, it's just ridiculous. Go ahead,
Okay,
TJ.
I got the stats. So according to Omeda.city, right? We were looking at like that 10 CS per minute kind of target, which all players aim for. The Snoop in game number 1 of the grand finals recorded the highest CS per minute of the entire tournament.
Okay.
He took 315 CS in 26 minutes, which gave him 11.9 CS per minute. No one comes
Wow.
anywhere close to that. I think actually Pablo, like in the same game with 285, was averaging 10.8 CS per minute, you know. And then also, like, you know, some love to the other teams as well. Sorry, had a nice 10 CS per minute game. Appy Picker's got some 10.5 in games in there, so that's kind of the holy grail of what you're aiming for. But that is unreal from the Snoop when you put it into that perspective.
11 over 11 CS,
Yeah.
almost 12. Like,
Yeah.
he's just more proficient.
And I think like one thing that is also very interesting is that we see that he has the lowest kill participation of all those offlaners, which is kind of in the playstyle of even worse timing that tournament. But still, like we can see that Mr. Gu and Pinzo, they actually didn't really get the chance to participate that much, because like 40% is not that different from 43 or 41%. And like probably like also like what the Snoop was doing is by applying like so much pressure, like those usual Sevrog that just like, okay, I have a fine lane, then I rotate and I secure objective. They couldn't, because they were just getting destroyed and being put on the tower, and they were forced to stay in this 1v1 they don't want to fight. And
Yeah,
so
it's difficult to get out the 1v1 when they're at your inhib in 5 minutes, you know. It's kind of insane, really, when you think about it. But honestly, I think this just shows like how dominant the Snoop was as well. And also, you know, all the names they took along the way inside of that solo lane. You know, Guru just did not measure up to the Snoop in that set. Even in the quarterfinals, I think it was Hossie played against. No, not Hossie. Sorry, that would have been
it's no
this
communication and
no communication. Yeah, so this would have been as I'm just recording, Chicken Brent, I believe, was the Noko solo laner.
I think it was
pretty-
Arcapod, Jake and Brent. If you go like, but maybe I'm wrong. Anyway, yeah, it's like this Snoop like just basically like a
No, it's
blind.
not that. Oh my word! Yeah, ignore me.
It's fine.
Creed.
Exactly,
That's what it
yeah.
is. Apologies.
Yeah, and just and then like the hero damage here, I think is not really like that meaningful. Like, true, we have like 7k against like 4.5k, but you're playing a Shinbi against like bruisery tank or even like full tank when it comes to Sevarog. So of course, like the hero damage gonna have like some discrepancy, because when as the Shinbi you're eating the Sevarog, like you're building like more hero damage than the other way around, basically. So this is not really like a valuable stat, but the CS is definitely one. And like the fact that those Sevarog couldn't like participate more in team fight is actually like also like very, very impressive. So that's what we were saying like about like even worse timing being a step ahead on the meta. And I think like nobody, not a single team like kind of actually like managed to adapt during like their best of 3, best of 5 against them, and it just got crushed by this the fact that the Snoop was just like so slippery and winning every single 1v1.
Right.
Yeah.
And you can see like they tried to build that Void Helm and Crystalline Curse, but since they don't do the same thing that they used to do, it's just not as effective against that Shinbi as they thought.
Yeah, that's definitely true. Because in the end, like what I remember, like this watching like the Snoopy was just like, okay, you're tanky. I'm just gonna poke you longer, but I'm not gonna die. And at some point, you will be low enough that you will have to go back, or I will dive you and I will get your tower anyway. And it was like this slow grinding. And I think like psychologically, also like for those offlaner facing the Snoop, it's just like every 3 seconds there is this wolf that comes at you with the annoying sound, and you lose like 5% of your health, and it's just like on cooldown every 3 seconds. It's the same thing during like 30 seconds until you're actually like in a position that you have to go back to base, and you just rinse and repeat during the whole game. That must have been hard.
Yeah, I know as an offlane main that I would be very irritated with a Shinbi just throwing a wolf at me every 5 seconds. Like, chill out, girl. All right.
It's war of attrition, really, is
Yeah.
how that's played.
And the Snoop was very patient with it, and it just like grinded people out of the game, basically. So I think that was like the last slide about data. Here we just like go for the half data slide, I would say, which is like the little rank and the trivia stuff that I love to deserve to the offer to the players. And we have Tekken Kid that in one game managed to play 24 wars into the field, and it's like the best that we had this tournament. Crazy Fool for the second time coming back as the bestie with, for the second time, the Narbash with 21 assists. A little bit less than in the first PCC event, which I think it was like 24 assists, but still like doing a great showing. The Snoop, the farmer, who would have thought that it was him, with one game with like almost 400 CS. Here, like the number of wards being destroyed was by Ray on 8 wards, and it's actually like pretty low compared to what we have got in the previous tournament. So people weren't like as proficient as destroying ward than the previous tournament. Pablo being the best like killer in one game with 15 kills. Still also like I think it was like lower than like the first tournament. I think it was Survivor with like over 20 kills. So teams are getting like harder to kill most of the time. And the false friend awards go to Toasty with like stealing 45 CS to his carry. Like
Toasty.
Securing 45 CS.
Like
You could just
Toasty
say
thinking
stealing.
is the protagonist. Like Toasty thinking is the guy that needs to carry the game, not trusting Lakenator. What a shame.
No wonder why Lakenator was a little bit underleveled. I knew it was Toasty's fault.
Lakenator was the support all along.
And Toasty saying that he probably like took most of that from Appy. It's true that Dirty Lake and the boys love to let Lakenator farming solo, and poor Appy Peeker not being able to get all his farm that he actually wants.
Right, so Toasty's the villain in this tournament. Got it.
Yeah. There have to be one. There have to be one.
I do like the icons as well. I like this. This is
love it.
great.
Thank you. And that will be it in regard of the data and also probably in terms of the whole talk show. So for like the future event, before we just like thank everyone present here. So like there will be like the next PCC in the future. I don't know exactly when it will be, but if I'm not mistaken, like there is like the next PCC will be with a 3 grand like cash prize, and that will be like a blast to watch. And of course, once it's aired, there will be meta talk on it. Like you can count on it. And for the next week Mugi's Prime Time, I will get the chance to have Blood Mordius and interview Blood Mordius on the topic of character creation. So that will be an interview when we try to go over everything that goes from like we need to create a character, like what is the original ID, how do we transform that into more advanced like game design aspect, how do we get a kit, how do we test, and how we polish everything. Also like on the art side, how does it work? Basically, like we want a character and the character is in the game playable for our players. So that's what we are going to discuss with Blood Mordius next week on the same timeline. And if you have any question that you would like to ask Blood Mordius on that topic, feel free to share with me. You can share it like by sending me a DM on Discord on Mugiwawa or on my own personal Discord, or when you come to my Twitch channel in the morning, like you can share anything and I will just compile everything, prepare the interview and try to ask all of that to Blood Mordius. Enough publicity for myself. You can see like all the links of the different person like work that have been present here. So of course you have the PCC and the Further Core, which is like the two main tournaments current in the scene, with PCC like doing a fantastic job on the side of the NA scene. And then we have TJDJ, which was our caster from EU, that is having like his Twitter and also his Twitch. And we have Efsixx. And thank you a lot, both of you, for being there. I had a blast exchanging with you. Also, like a lot of insightful still like you bring there. Like thanks a lot for being here.
And thank you for hosting. You know, had a very fun evening.
Very fun to finally be with TJDJ for once, since Lance always tries to take me away from him. So it was nice to hang out with you too.
Thank you. So of course, also like thank you everyone for the chat, for following the event. I hope you appreciate it. Thank you for the feedback. Also, I will try to change this like ugly yellow color with right text so we can get better and more like readable for the eyes, for the audience. Of course, I always appreciate constructive criticism. And I hope you have all a wonderful night, a wonderful weekend for those that have the opportunity to enjoy it. And on my side, I will like find you all again Monday morning on my own channel, so we can just enjoy a little bit more competitive Predecessor all around, all together. Thank you everyone for being there. Thank you, our guests. We are out.